The aggressive Canadian says, "You don't really have a guitar project like that, do you?" Right? To which I explained, thank goodness we don't. And may we never have that, because that is purely Canadian, and it was awesome. And I would hate to think we in the United States would copy that. Thank you for having me, for allowing me to come from the way south to be here today with you, and to talk about not the fact that we're all customers, but I also want to talk about the fact that we are all brands. Every single one of us is a customer and a brand, and so why don't we talk about branded customer experiences today. And let's talk about some of the brands that have caught the attention of the world sufficient to actually be defined as customer experience providers. And what does that really look like, and what does that mean? Well, I heard some great words today. As someone who's worked with Starbucks, it is so exciting to know that Canadians are so committed to coffee that they will not give it up relative to some rather significant competitors. It was extremely heartening to hear over the course of time today words like trust, words like story, words like creating experiences through people and the tactile connection to things like guitars and small objects of significance to heritage and legacy. We weren't talking about the thing, we weren't talking about the country parameters, we were talking about an emotional connection that engaged you. And I watched you be engaged, you silly people. You just got pulled right into the story. Wow, wasn't that wonderful? Weren't you alive for a few minutes there where it was real, it was authentic, it wasn't a guitar. It was a story. It was a connection. It was you being a part of something bigger than yourself. And I'm here today to suggest that we all as brands have an opportunity in our individual lives and in our corporate lives to create that magic so that it just doesn't happen once in a while at an Engage conference, but it happens consistently in the touch points that we create with the customers that we encounter. Now, we know customers are fickle. You heard the research earlier today about how sophisticated and intellectual the consumer is and how kind of opinionated, albeit tolerant, but opinionated, how smart they are. And thanks to the interconnection of the world we live in, people can check out any claim you make about yourself. And they can check it out not by looking at your website, but by going to the voices of all kinds of other people who have traveled the journey. And I've spent a great deal of time looking at the research in Canada, and I must tell you, Canadians are very, very picky about service. It's partly why I think you have a great international brand, because you expect a lot from service providers. You also, according to the research that I've seen from Canadian consumers, you tell people when service isn't right. You tell them in droves. And clearly, the opportunity today is to understand what a brand is. I will tell you that a brand is nothing more than what people say about you when you're not around. Think about Joey's brand, whether he's in the room or not. What are you going to say about him when you go back to the office today? Pretty amazing brand story, right? What are people saying about you back at the office now that you're not here today? Making you a little paranoid, huh? Let's go back and check it out. I don't know. The message for us today is to figure out how do we take this opportunity with a very well-educated, very savvy, very conversational consumer in Canada and globally. And how do we get that story to work in our favor? You know, you heard earlier today something called a trust mark as a reference from the Ipsos Reid group. A trust mark, as opposed to the concept of a trademark. I would even go one step further and rely on some great individuals who have written about this and have called it a love mark. That it's not enough to just be trusted, but Kevin Roberts, who runs Saatchi & Saatchi, an international brand and marketing company, says essentially you better go beyond trust now. You better be a love mark in the brand space. So what does it mean to be a love mark? I mean, we all have kind of an image of what a love mark might look like based on high school, but that's a different kind of love mark altogether.